So, on me reviewing the 4 gems that I discovered at Series Mania Digital Forum 2020, you may wonder, what was it that put me off of the remaining 50 or so selections of the forum? Well, indistinctness. The series that did not arouse in me a desire to watch them till the end were not bad. They were all quality productions, carefully selected by the organizing committee of the festival, whose taste in and knowledge of digital and TV series is internationally trusted and respected. But on watching a few of these series in a row, I started having difficulty distinguishing where one ended and another began. That is not an uncommon experience of any international festival. There is so much content being produced around the globe at every minute that coming up with a series that stands out comes close to a miracle. That being said, I have found a lot of value in familiarizing myself with the whole program of Series Mania Digital Forum 2020, as it revealed to me the themes and issues with which the world is currently preoccupied. Interestingly enough, I discovered that these themes are somewhat region-specific. Let's start with Europe then. I don't think we will ever be able to think of Europe without thinking of its wars. There were so many of them. But the British series World on Fire decides to look, yet again, at the Second World War. Is there anything new left to say about it? Well, I guess depends on your perspective. For decades, the Second World War was portrayed as a story of clear winners and definite losers. However, recently, more and more storytellers started looking at the fatal consequences of this war on the micro level of an individual or the meso level of different communities that had very diverse goals and hopes when coming into the war battles. World on Fire is one of those stories that are interested in an individual's role and fate in the Second World War. There's a British translator, an American war reporter, a daughter of a Polish partisan, and a German family with a disabled daughter that all are fighting their own battles, both in the trenches as well as outside of them. The series is created and written by Peter Bowker, who is best known for his critically acclaimed series, The A Word. So the biggest asset of the series, naturally, is the nuanced, witty, and otherwise brilliant dialogue. However, the characters feel a little flat and generic. Therefore, it is quite difficult to become invested in any one of them. Predictability of the characters, respectively, leads to a predictable story that feels like something we have already seen before. The Dutch series Commandos also explores the impact of the war on an individual. The protagonist of the series is John, a former commander of the Royal Dutch Commandos that were sent to Nigeria under American orders to free the son of a wealthy Nigerian oil family from terrorists. However, in the middle of the mission, the commandos discovered that the man whom they were supposed to free was not a hostage, but an ally of the terrorists. The failed mission of the past becomes relevant again when the former hostage, so to speak, arrives in the Netherlands in the capacity of a minister of the Nigerian government on a mission of his own to make sure that his past will in no way interfere with his political ambitions for the future. The series starts exactly the same as all other series of the genre. We are introduced to former commandos that are all traumatized by their experiences in the battlefield and struggle to adapt to a normal social life. When they're called on a new mission, at first they reject the call, but finally give in because it's just so much more exciting than a normal life, and because their old buddies ask them. This part of the series is neither new nor exciting. We've seen that before, but the creators attempt to look at what's really happening behind the heroic facade of international missions, gives the series a new twist, and raises important questions about the transparency and necessity of many international conventions and agreements. How do these agreements affect local communities, like the one portrayed in the series? And to what extent do they serve humanity, as opposed to a handful of entitled oligarchs and politicians? Now that would be something interesting to explore. Australia was a special guest of Series Mania 2020. So I had an opportunity to watch quite a few Australian series of this past season. Watching these series, I learned two things. First, Australians make a lot of comedies. Second, Australian comedies are incredibly depressing. It might be cultural, as most of the humor is, but Australian dramas are much more entertaining than Australian comedies. And The Commons is definitely one of such dramas. The series is set in a not too far off future that embodies most of the current scientists' forecasts. Natural resources are scarce. The planet is constantly raided by tsunamis. Only the rich and the privileged can afford to repose in climate rooms where they get to enjoy clean air. The only possibility for the poor to set their feet on the grass is in hospitals, where small reservations of natural flora are used for patient treatment. People die of incurable viruses and the human immune system is shattered overall. Oh, and there are climate refugees who are fleeing the parts of the earth that become uninhabitable day by day. Sadly, the inhabitable parts of the planet, such as Australia in the series, cannot let all of the refugees in. And in the middle of all this havoc and hopelessness, all that the protagonist of the series, Edie, wants to do is reproduce. Unfortunately, her immune system registers the fetus as a fatal threat, which leads to a miscarriage every time Edie conceives. Thus, Edie decides to shut her immune system down for 3 months until her fetus grows enough to remain in her body. This would be a very intriguing, inciting incident if the writers of the series, amidst their efforts to create a fictitious world of the future, didn't forget the characters that inhabit this world. As a result, the world of the series is truly breathtaking, but the characters resemble the robots that serve them. There's so much background information that we've got to take in during the first 2 episodes that by the time we get to Edie's big decision, we simply do not care. Unfortunately, the writers spend too much time on familiarizing us with the world of the series and too little time on familiarizing us with the characters that are supposed to be the driving force behind the story. Even the brilliant cast that includes Joanne Froggatt, also known as Anna Bates from Downton Abbey, Rupert Penry-Jones, and many others cannot salvage that. In the Japanese series, Behind the Door, conceiving a child doesn't seem to be half as hard as in The Commons. Risako, the heroine of the series, has a beautiful and healthy 3-year-old daughter with her husband. But it doesn't mean that her life is easy. One day, she's invited as a prospective juror in a criminal case, where a stay-at-home mom is tried for drowning her 8-month-old baby girl. At first, Risako is disgusted by the defendant, but as she goes deeper into the case, she starts noticing more and more similarities between the defendant and herself. Postpartum depression and other struggles of motherhood is not a new topic in the so-called Western societies. It has been lately popping up in more and more films and series. But watching Behind the Door, you get a sense that in Japan, speaking openly about this topic might be extremely daring and even dangerous. Motherhood is supposed to be a privilege and a sacred duty of a woman, and complaining about it is nothing short of blasphemy. But not every woman is cut out for martyrdom. So it is important to understand that a little help and support now and then could make all the difference in a young mother's life. Although the main characters of The Commons and Behind the Door seem to struggle with very different challenges, they have something essential in common. They are afraid to ask for help because of society's expectations in regards to what a good mother should be. In the context of these expectations, being a mother on your own terms becomes the ultimate form of women's liberation. Jolene, who you see on the screen, from the British series Adult Material, is the epitome of being a mother on her own terms. She's not only a mother of three, she is also a proud breadwinner of her family and a leading British porn star. She claims to enjoy her work, on the basis of which she built a very successful enterprise. Jolene seems like a truly liberated woman who doesn't give a damn about the restraints that society tries to put on her, until she decides to leave the porn industry. Porn industry is widely known to be the ultimate form of exploitation of the human body. The series portrayed the less than optimal conditions of porn performance and the horrible treatment those performers received from their producers in quite extensive detail. Jolene tries to use her star power to fight against these injustices, but the producers manipulate her. Moreover, Jolene's job is having daunting effects on her personal life. She feels emotionally distant from her husband. Her kids are bullied at school because of her job. Her daughter catches chlamydia that Jolene brings home from the set. As a result, Jolene feels less and less in control of her own body and life. Therefore, she goes on television to talk about the injustices of the porn industry. And this is where all the hell gets loose. When all Jolene's producers unite against her, she understands that her image of a liberated career woman implies very little real power. Although the series raises a lot of timely questions about human rights in the Western society, as well as provides us with an opportunity to peek into the world that most of us would never have any access to, it is definitely not for the faint-hearted. It is difficult sometimes to understand that the series tries to show the human or the inhuman side of the porn industry. Maybe both. But the latter definitely overpowers the former, which makes the show quite difficult to watch at times. Eastern series, or series from the Far East, have recently become a mandatory exotic asset of every international festival. The creators of these series seem to understand their role in such festivals a little too well. According to the Eastern tradition, the realm of souls and the world of the living are inseparable. Therefore, the souls are believed to participate in the lives of the living on equal terms. Many Eastern series exploit this belief to the limit. The Singaporean series Soul Food and The Cursed, a series from South Korea, are typical examples of this exploitation. Soul Food tells a story of a chef who earns her living recreating the last meal that a person had with a loved one before his or her death. If the chef gets the meal right, she can bring the deceased loved one back from the dead for a short period of time so that the living next of kin can resolve any issues they didn't get a chance to resolve while the deceased loved one was still alive. Although this seems like an interesting premise, it sadly remains largely unexplored. The series mainly consists of a sequence of either images of food or images of people eating food. For the most part of the series, its characters passively wait until the magical meal is prepared. And we never get a chance to fully understand either the inner conflict of the characters or what would change for both the chef and her clients if the former failed. Without a clear inner conflict of the characters, the series resembles a cooking show more than a TV drama. The story of The Cursed is a little more complex. Im Jin-hee is a reporter with a strong drive for justice who is determined to expose the inhumane practices of a major IT corporation. In the course of this investigation, it is revealed to us as the audience that the CEO of the corporation takes all his advice from a demon whisperer. It is common knowledge in the world of the series that no human being can fight a person who has demons on her side. Luckily, the reporter is approached by So-jin, a teenage girl with an ability to curse others with death. So-jin's mom was murdered by the evil CEO with the help of his demon whisperer, so she wants revenge. The CEO doesn't necessarily remember one of the many women he once killed, but he wants to take over the world. And So-jin's magic powers are in his way. So The battle of magicians begins. The winner of this battle is quite evident from the very beginning of the series, but the battle scenes are magnificent. First, we witness a corrupt editor of the magazine where Im Jin-hee works, literally twisted into a knot by the spirits that So-jin evokes. Then we see how the evil demon Whisperer tries to figure out what kind of spirits murdered the editor. This scene lasts for about 5 minutes and very graphically depicts the entire ritual. If this ritual were a short film, it could easily win awards for the best makeup, music, costumes, and choreography in any international film festival. But in the series, it becomes a rare glimpse of very powerful entertainment in the context of very formulaic detective series. The parts of the series that show the magic powers that are at work in this series are quite impressive. And unfortunately, in contrast to them, the parts where the story of the series develops feels like a letdown. So, in conclusion, Series Mania Digital Forum 2020 revealed a few tendencies of the global television and digital series scene that make me very optimistic about the future of the series as a form of storytelling. First, series creators are not afraid to tackle socially sensitive themes, such as climate change, human rights, cyberbullying, etc. And they do it with a lot of knowledge, nuance, and empathy. Since these themes are virtually disappearing from feature films, television and digital series are becoming one of the main platforms where the current human condition is analyzed and reflected. Next, series creators go for relatability rather than likability of their characters. Quirky has become the new hot. I hope it's a sign of audiences getting wary of heroic characters that conquer all obstacles on their way. I can see a new form of heroism emerging, where hanging in there day after day is much more heroic than a one-off victory or prize. Finally, series creators are more and more often choosing collective protagonists and focus their stories on communities rather than individuals. Everything's Gonna Be Okay, Why Women Kill, and World on Fire are good examples of this tendency. This technique is not easy to pull off since it's quite difficult to make the whole collective of characters equally appealing to the audience. But I believe that the fact that more and more creators go for it is reflective of the audiences and respectively entire societies becoming more oriented to the well-being of communities rather than separate individuals. And that gives me hope not only for the future of TV and digital series, but for the future of the humankind as a whole.